Let's see, participant. Okay, so 9:25, we're gonna start this chapter. It's not really hard chapter. It's talking about DHCP server and client. So what does that mean is you can configure your router as a DHCP server. And also, you have seen, for example, if you have at your home, if you have a Linksys router or any of these types of router, you can configure your router. Actually, it's pre-configured. You don't have to configure it. It get an IP address from the ISP automatically, and that's why you can. When you go, for example, to Best Buy or Office Depot, you buy any of these routers, and you connect it to your ISP. The ISP is going to give a WAN IP address to that router. So in this chapter, we basically talks about the DHCP version 4 server and client. In general, generally speaking, we should know the purpose of the DHCP. DHCP basically it provides services or service for the client. So whenever the client boots up, okay, and usually don't have any IP address, so you can configure to obtain IP address automatically from the server. Well, some people said, well, if I have a small company and I don't want to dedicate or go buy Microsoft server and hardware to just for the DHCP, can I just put them on the router, on the Cisco router? And the answer is yes, you can do it on the router. And that's how what we're gonna do this morning, show you how to configure it. So, and like they say, you can, the DHCP, that the router could be a server or could be a client. Server means what? Provide services for the PCs that or the devices that's connected in the network. A client means if you connect it to an ISP, you can configure that interface to get an IP address to it. So what's involved in a DHCP version 4? It's first of all, you need to know the nature of the protocol. Is the DHCP, is it TCP or a UDP? Remember that? What kind of protocol they use? Let's see. Who's the smart guy in the class? Let's see. What do you think? Just put an answer. It's 50-50 chance.
UDP.
I'm sorry?
UDP.
UDP. That's correct. It's a UDP. So when the client actually boots up and they don't have any IP address, they send broadcast. So they send broadcast to the network asking if there's any DHCP server on this network. And that's what we said the client trying to discover. And that's what we call discover. And so how are you going to discover? You have to send broadcast. Then if, for example, there is a DHCP server on the network, now let's go to step number 1. Step number 1, the client send the broadcast. Well, how's the client is going to send the broadcast? Because we said this client doesn't have an IP address, so how can I send broadcast? What we're using? What do you think? How we send broadcast? If the client doesn't have an IP address, how we know the broadcast, like for example 255.255. But how gonna send? How is this client is gonna send broadcast without having an IP address? We're gonna send. Well, first of all, the server, we expect the DHCP server to be on the same network as a client. And what kind of communication we have when we are in the same network? What kind of address we use? We use MAC address, right? So we need to use FFFFF, which is a broadcast. Then the server is going to receive that information. They're going to send it back to the client. The client is supposed to have a unique IP address. So we're going to send it for that client who sent the broadcast. That's why the server is going to offer an IP address to the client. Then the client is going to send back, I accept the IPv4 address offer. And after that, the server is going to acknowledge that acceptance. So the question is, what happened if there's no IP address, there's no DHCP server on the network? What's going to happen?
You won't get an IP address?
We're going to get the PIPA IP address, the 169 address. That means there's no DHCP server. So I said, okay, I tried to get an IP address from a DHCP server, but it looks like this segment or this network has no DHCP server. Therefore, the operating system is going to assign 169 address, and that's what we call the PIPA. So the whole process over here is going into 4 steps. It's summarized by DORA. What's a DORA? D for discovery, which is from the client. O for what? Offer from the DHCP server, or a request from the clients, and A is acknowledgement from the server. So that's what we call DORA. So who's trying to discover? Is it the client or the DHCP? Of course, the client. Who's going to offer the IP address? The server, the DHCP server. And who is going to accept it or request it?
The client.
The client. And who's going to acknowledge is the server. So it's always a case like this. That's what we call DORA. Okay. So during the negotiation between the two, this is basically they talk about each one of them step by step. But basically, it depends on how you configure the DHCP server. Basically, the client, what's happening in the client basically they lease the IP address. They lease it, they rent it from the server. So it depends on how you configure the DHCP server. By default, the lease on the server or the Microsoft server is 8 days. Now, you can change that number to 3 or 2 days or 4 days or a month. That will depend on the number of IP addresses versus the number of clients that you have on the network. If you have a lot of clients and you don't have a lot of numbers on the DHCP server, you need to make the lease shorter, okay, to get chance to the other client to get an IP address. Now, if you have enough IP addresses for everybody, you can make the lease to go longer than 8 days, maybe a month. Why? Because you don't need to do what? To create unnecessarily traffic to renew the lease. Because after that lease expired, in the midway, let's say 8 days, Now, on the number 4, the clients that said, okay, can I have that IP address again? So they start negotiation to renew the lease. So if the IP address, the server is there, they can respond and they can renew the lease. Now, what happened if the client is no longer in the network? Basically, we need to give that IP address to somebody else. Okay? So that's why it'll be better to configure a server with a static address, because when you get a DHCP, when you get an IP address from the DHCP server, that IP address, it might change. So, and if you have a device providing services for another client, that's going to be a problem. Especially, you need to put static addresses to all, like printers, servers, any devices that provide services for the clients. You need to configure them with static IP address. And some of the configuration you put also on the DHCP server, you give the client not just only an IP address. You can give them also the subnet mask. You can give them the DNS and also the gateway. And also you can do what? Other options. They call it scope options, like TFTP server or whatever. Those are an option. So on the server, you go over here on this router, for example, and you can configure it to supply an IP address to this segment and IP addresses to these segments. Okay? I don't need to buy a special server to act as a DHCP server. So over here, they give step by step. You can read it. It's not a big deal. So let's do a configuration. So if I go to Packet Tracer, instead of talking about it, we can actually practice. So I can go to Packet Tracer. And we can do this simulation here for, we can do different scenarios. Oh, I have to log again. Okay. Packet Tracer. Okay, what is everybody? Let's see. Okay, so people. This is going and going and going and going. I don't know. Let's see. Why did you give me this? I don't understand. So, yeah, I need power over here. And let's say you have segments. One here, one here. I can create this is a server for both segments. How do you do that? So, let me make this segment 3 gigabit, and same thing again. This was and we can create a couple of machines here. 1, 2, okay, let's do this. Let's do that. Populate this guy here. Too many. You got the idea. Doesn't matter. You have 100 or 3 or 4. It's the same concept. This is one. Okay. So let's put some label. This is 192.168.10 network /24. And this segment is going to be 192.168.20. Of course, you have to go to the regular configuration first. Yeah. And let's make this one as this is the server, so we expect to provide services. So let's get this address 192.168.10. Okay. So let's figure it out. Just easy. Static. 192.168.10. This is route 1, and this is the default gateway. So we're going to give you 192.168.10.1 because this is supposed to be on the same subnet as this one here. And let's configure this one as DNS server. Okay. So now we can go to the server, to the router, in config. So enable config. Host name is always good to give host name. A lot of y'all does not put host name on the switches. So if you have like switches, it's switch. It's always put host name. Some of y'all did excellent job. Some of y'all okay. Anyway, so first of all, I need to configure these interfaces. So we need to go to the interface. Gigabit 0/0. 2 zeros. Not 3 zeros. Of course, we need to put the internet address, and then we get out of 192.168. 10.1, 255, many times. It's Monday. Motion that. So this is a segment is up, and you go to the other interface, which is gigabit 0/what? 0. 1. IP address. So 255. No motion. And also you can put description, layer 2, layer 1. Okay, so this is layer 1, this is layer 2. So also you can add that on the router itself if you want. Since you already know this is the description, that's fine. Now, we go exit. Let's create now. We need to create. I need to make this one DHCP server layer 1 and layer 2. The first thing you need to do, the router is different. Configure the DHCP server router is going to be a little different than you put them on the server. On the server, basically, if you have a Microsoft server, you go and you start doing configure DHCP, create some kind of what we call scope. The scope basically is like a pool. You say, okay, I want to make, I want to put in this pool IP addresses range from this range to that range, from this IP address to that address. And then you can exclude some of the addresses. Now, when you configure the router, you need to exclude first, okay? So you're gonna go to do IP DHCP and put a question mark, okay? So you can do excluded addresses. That's what you need to do first. You need to exclude addresses. Excluded addresses. Well, I gave 10 to this guy and 1 over here. So I can do range, exclude range of addresses. And that's what I'm going to do. 192.168.10.1 all the way to 192.168.10.10. Okay. And also I can exclude, I can do IP DHCP exclude address. I want to exclude the last address on this in this subnet. So I can put 192.168.10.254. I can exclude that. So that means it's not part of the pool. And I put IP DHCP, and then you put question mark. And then the other options, you can do pool. You want to create a pool. So I'm going to call it pool. Then you have to give it a name, pool name. So I can put LAN 1 pool if you want to. So we know that pool is for LAN 1. And you have to say, do question mark right here. So that's one of the options. You have DNS server, default router, and a network. The first thing you need to define the network of this pool. So the network for this pool is 192.168. Oh, so you have to put network first. Network 192.168.10 at 0, then you need to put the mask, which is 255. Wait a minute. 255, 255, 255, that's 0. Then I need to put the default gateway, that's default router or default gateway, to give it to the client. Because if I stop right here, the client is going to get the address. Like he's going to get the number 11 first and so on, but they're not going to get the default gateway. So to do that, we need to put default router 192.168.10.1. And also I need to put a DNS server as an option. So put DNS server. I can put this address or I can use 8.8.8, doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to make a statement. The DNS server doesn't have to be on the same subnet. But the default gateway, it has to be on the same subnet, on the same network as a client. Okay. I can put 8.8.8.8. Okay. And I can exit. Exit one more time or end. Then we'll save it. So before I go create another DHCP pool for LAN 2, I like to test this one first. So we expect this one to be .11. So you go to this device and you go from static to DHCP, and we get 192.168.10.11. I got all the configuration here ready to go. Okay. Same thing as for rest of them. This is going to be .12 and so on. Now, question for you guys. Can I get an IP address on PC6? What's your answer? Can I get an IP address for this PC? Somebody says some. Simon said,
No, you shouldn't be able to.
I should not able to. You're right. Because I should not be able to because this one is on a different subnet. Because when this guy send the request, he's going to send as a broadcast. So as long if they have a DHCP server on the broadcast domain, then we'll respond. But what's the broadcast domain? The broadcast domain is going to stop. That's the broadcast domain. Let me.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is. This was weird. So this is the whole broadcast domain for this segment. So this is going to send to everybody till you get to this port right here. Over here, we'll stop. Okay. So that's why I need to create another.
Cool.
I need to create another pool for this guy here. So we'll go to the this router, and we're going to repeat the same process. We're going to go to config T. Config T, and we're going to say IP DHCP. And we need to do what first? Exclude it. You exclude, because once you put that network, you cannot go back to exclude. So it's a good idea. Always try to exclude first. So I'm going to exclude the first 9 addresses. So I excluded 192.168.20.1 all the way to 192.168.20.9. Okay. Then you're going to put IP DHCP pool. I'm going to call it LAN to pool. Okay, so we need to define that particular pool I'm creating to which network it belongs to. So this is 192.168.20.0. Oh, you need to put network. Network first. So the network for this pool is 192.168.20.0 with the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Then I need to put the gateway for this. So default router for this pool is 192.168 dot what?
20.1.
20.1. And the DNS, I really can't put any DNS. I can point it to 192.168.10.10 if I want to. Okay.
Mhm.
And now we can exit. Exit one more time. And at this point, what I can do, I can save it and I can test it. So how are we going to test it? Same thing as this one. So I expect this one to be 20.10 because this is the first one. It's already there, 20.10. Ah, where's my default gateway?
Mm.
Oh, let's see. Now it's correct. It looks like it was set on the DHCP when we tried it. It didn't work. Then it grabbed this one here. So this is going to be 11. And this is going to be 12. Okay. Bien. Well, this is cool. How about if how about if I'll take this guy out. Boom. All right. And put another router in there. And connect the same way with gigabit. Gigabit here and gigabit here. And let's configure this guy with the IP addresses first. So this is no enable config T host name R1 interface gigabit 0/0 IP address 192.168.10.1 255.255.255.0. That's it. Interface gigabit 0/1, and we need to do IP address 192.168.20.1 255.255.255.0. Okay, exit or end. Okay, question. Now, how about if I want to make this one as a DHCP server? Oh, what do we forgot to do? No shutdown? Interface gigabit 0/0 no shutdown. Interface gigabit 0/1 no shutdown. Okay, so I want to make this server right here as a DHCP server for this guy here. So I can go over here, and you've seen that you go to services, you make DHCP, and you change the gateway to 192.168.10.1. DNS server 8.8.4.4 doesn't matter. Start IP address from 10 or 11 because this is 10. And sorry, cannot talk right now. And I can save it. See that? So now I can take this one out and get one here. So this is now we got 14. Whoa.
You didn't turn on the server.
Services. Very good. I didn't turn the services on. Common mistake. See that little services? You need to turn. Very good. Okay, now we need to go over here and see if this is gonna work. Okay, so that will work. Because why? Because I put the 88.4.4, so that's good. And you can do the same thing with all of them. Put static, then put okay, change, and same thing with this guy. Now the question is, can these guys can get an IP address from the server? But right now is no, because they are in a separate subnet. See, I'm gonna get an IPipa 169 address. So what we're going to do is we need to learn how to configure, for example, how to configure the router to allow clients to access the DHCP server outside their LAN. Okay. So we have to go to the interface on the router. So the way you do it, you go to the gateway of this LAN, which is this interface, and you're going to tell this interface, please help the client to get an IP address to the server. Okay. And we need to go to config T over here. What a config T, huh? Config T, and we need to say interface gigabit 0/1. Now, if you put question mark here, and one of the command that I'm looking for is, well, it's not there yet. So I'm going to put IP, then question mark. And you see that command here, IP helper address? That's what I need. IP helper address. Okay, so that means please help to get the IP address of the DHCP server. What's the DHCP server? 192.168.10.10, right?
Right.
So basically, I'm here and I'm pointing. If somebody send the broadcast wants a DHCP server, I'm gonna forward this request to this DHCP server. You follow? And that's what we're gonna do. So all what you need is this line. That's it. Done. So you put in WR. Now I can go to my client right here, which has the, it's already have it get an IP address already. See that? Oh, not really. Okay, why I'm not getting an IP address? Anybody want to guess? Because I didn't create any pool yet for this
And
guy.
then set the pool.
So that's what I'm going to go. I'm going to go to this guy here and the DHCP server. And I need to take this one out, put LAN 2, replace the 10 by the 20. And the 8.8.4, I make it 8.8.8. And over here, I can change it to 20. And we need to add. You can make this server, for example, 192.168.10.10.
I wouldn't, the starting address, I would change the starting address to the LAN 2 to 192.168.20.10.
Right.
20.20.
Yep. Very good. So now the service is on, my LAN 2 is in here, the gateway is right here, and everything is correct. So now I'll try it. So I go to this guy here and try to get an IP address. Let's see. And here it is. It's my DNS. This is the 20. And same thing in here. You're going to see it. Work fine. And this one, same thing. This is what I'm going to do. So that's basically what the DNS. So what help is the IP helper. So anytime you have a DHCP server outside your LAN, you need to use the gateway to help the client get to that server by going to the IP address to the router and put the default gateway, IP helper address on the default gateway. That's how you do it. Now, why do we think we need this kind of stuff? Because remember, like we did VLANs, and we have a multiple VLANs, which is each VLAN has a different subnets. If I have a 20, 60 VLANs, I'm not going to have 60, 70 DHCP server in there. So we can put it in one server, but the only thing I need to do to go to the gateway of each VLAN and put IP helper address to help me bring that, provide the client with, or connect him to the DHCP server. Does that make sense? All right. Question at this point. So you guys can do this?
Yeah, it doesn't seem that bad.
Yep. It's not that really hard. Okay. Let's see. What time is it now?
Yeah.
It's 10:07, and we're supposed to have time to 10:40, I believe. Yep. So we have a few minutes. Let's see if we can do something. Oh man, I don't like this weather. I get. Oh, let's see VLAN. Let's see VLAN. So let's see if we have a different VLANs. Oh. So we have a packet tracer ready from previous configuration, which is at VLAN 10, .10, 0.0, and 20, and 30. So I can put a DHCP server for all these VLANs in one spot. Okay, so I can go over here and plug in this server on VLAN 10. Okay. So I want to select a port that belongs to VLAN 10. Okay, VLAN 10 goes from ports what? 1 to 10. So how about 6? Okay, then I need to configure this guy with 4 pools or 3 pools. One for VLAN 10, one for 20, and one for 30. First of all, before I do anything, this server has to have what? Static address. So it has to belong to 10.10.10. So I put 10.0.10.10. I don't know if I'm using that IP address or not somewhere else, but yeah, already in use. Let's use a well, I'm gonna use 10 anyway. I don't care what they say. 255, 255, 255.0, and I expect to this the gateway is going to be 10.0.10.10. dot what? 10.0.10.1. DNS doesn't matter. 8.8.8.8 at this point doesn't matter. Okay, so now I need to go to services. I go to DHCP server and turn it on first. If I change this one for VLAN 10, it's going to give me some issue, the pool sometimes. So I leave the first one as default and create the default way for this VLAN 10. It's going to be 192. Oh, no. It's going to be 10.0.10.1. DNS, let's make it 8.8.8.4.4. And start IP address 11. Since this is 10, this is it. Well, I can make this one 10.0.10.10 as a TFTP server. Okay, let's see if that works first. Well, this is first of all, let's see. This is on VLAN 10. The answer is yes. So configure. Let's see. Now it's working. So I got the first one. And I assume this one here also on VLAN 10. So VLAN 10 is working. Now we know this does not gonna work because this is on different VLAN, which is VLAN 20. This is on ports 11 to 16. So this is on port 12. So if I go over here and this is on VLAN 20, it's not gonna get an IP address unless it's gonna get the piper. And the same thing in this. Okay. Same thing in here. So what we're gonna do, we need to configure a pool for each. We need to configure a pool for each VLAN. So the way you do this, you go to the services right here. Desktop. What did it? Oh, right here. The DHCP server. You go to services. And I need to create VLAN 20. So go VLAN 20. Pool. And I can change the gateway to, already change the third octet to 20. And maybe this one needs to be 20. And really the rest of them, I can keep them the same unless if I want to change something, the DNS or something. Okay, so why not? I can make 8.8.8. Doesn't matter. So that's the for VLAN 20. So let's test it as we go. You think I'm going to get an IP address for VLAN 20? You think this guy's going to get an IP address? No? Yes? It shouldn't. Should not. Why not? See? It's not getting an IP address. Why not? Because it's in a different VLAN. The DHCP server in different VLAN. So you need to go to the gateway of that VLAN and you need to put the IP helper address and point it to the DHCP server. Okay? So let's finish up another pool right here for VLAN 30 since we are here. And we need to call this one VLAN 30. Change it the 2 to 3. And also right here, the same thing. Just to create that pool. And we need to add it and save it. Now, As you can see, I have a 3 pool. I have the default. I have VLAN 20, and I have VLAN 30. Those are the pools. So now I'm done with this one here. So what I need to go to the DHCP to the gateways. So I need to go to the router. What happened to the router? It's open somewhere. Oh, you want the router? 0. Why I cannot open my router? Is it open somewhere? Let's see. DHCP server. Yeah, that's an old one. I don't want to save it. I just want to exit this guy here. Let's see DHCP. Let's stop. Boom. Okay, so in this case, what we have, that's a problem. I'm not opening this one here. Why not? Is it open somewhere? Router 0 maybe? Yes. Man. Oh, man. I'm crazy. It's open on the other screen. I didn't see it. I keep clicking on it. What's going on here? All right, this is it. Okay, so I need to go to each interface right here. Because as you can see, this is my router. So I'm going to do enable first and show. It's good to show what IP addresses you have. Show IP interface brief. And I have the gigabit dot 0.10.20.30, and this is the IP address to each one of them. And I have even for 99. So what I need to do is to go to interface, config T first, config T, and go to interface gigabit 0/0.10, right? And I'm going to say IP helper address, and I need to point it to what? Okay, I don't need it for 10 because 10 already the DHCP on 10. So I don't need it 10. So never mind this guy here. I'm going to go to the 20. And then they say IP helper address, and I need to point it to the DHCP server, which is 10.0.10.10. Okay, same thing. I need to go to the interface. Let me exit this one here. Interface gigabit 0/0.30. And I need to put IP helper address pointed to the right DHCP server, which is 10.0.10.10. Now we can end it and we can save it. And now I'm supposed to get IP addresses to all my clients, even though this one was on VLAN 10. This DHCP, this is DHCP for all the VLANs. So let's see if this is going to work. Okay, voila. So we got the DHCP for VLAN 20. Let's see if this is going to work for VLAN 30. Okay, so we got the right address here. And same thing in here. So it's already working for VLAN 10. Let's test 20 on this segment. It's supposed to get 20. That's 20. That's correct. And this one for VLAN 30 is already VLAN 30. So that's why we have one DHCP on the different VLAN or the different subnet provide services to different VLAN by using the IP helper address. Any question at this time? Okay, so if you don't have a question, just do some practice. And tomorrow we're gonna start new chapter. Chapter 8, I believe. Chapter 8 talks about what? Chapter 8. DHCP server 6. So it's a related topic. So I have chapter 9 talks about FHRP. Okay. So the next test is 7, 8, and 9, or just 7 and 8? Anybody look at this? So expect a test maybe tomorrow, Tuesday, maybe Thursday or Friday. Let's see. Seven to 9. Okay, so Thursday. Test will be Thursday.
Are we gonna have a skills exam paired with it like the other times, or is it just gonna be the test
Yeah,
itself?
it's gonna be skilled. So tomorrow we supposed to finish the DHCP server 6, and Wednesday we do some hands-on practice, and you take your test on Thursday. Sounds good?
Yes, sir.
All right. If you don't have any question, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right. See you tomorrow.
All right. You have a nice afternoon. We'll talk tomorrow.